Line's good.
Never on!
Whoa.
Hard! Hardly.
Come on, Brent.
Line's good.
Got real close.
The hair high, right?
Try and hit 2/3.
Have they saved it for her? Yes, they have.
Ooh, welcome to Game of Stones, everybody. I am Sean Graham, Scott alongside, as always. Hello, Scott.
Sean, you ever think about curling when it's 40 degrees outside?
No, I don't.
Sometimes I think, oh, that'd be nice right now. Just be in that nice, cool
Yeah.
box. Yeah.
It's warm here in the nation's capital. We are pushing 40 degrees with the Humidex. It is unpleasant, to say the least. Scott, how have you been coping?
Mostly staying inside. Although I've had to go into the office for a couple days now. And when I got home, my back had like the imprint of my backpack on it because it was so sweaty. It's just disgusting. I think we've had a heat warning now for like 5 or 6 days already, and it's not going to end for another few. So everybody drink a lot of water out there. I'll take my own advice and have some now, but be safe.
Yeah, be safe, everybody, in the heat. Certainly, it's just heat right now here in Ottawa, Central Canada, but certainly we are thinking about those who have the fires going on out west. And as we record this, Tropical Storm Henri is making its way up the East Coast and is in New England right now. Looks like it'll head into Nova Scotia. So sending our best thoughts to everybody as they deal with very strange weather patterns here in North America. So this week, we're going to return to our countdown of ranking the best players from each decade. The last time we did this a couple weeks ago, we talked about the 1990s. So we are going to push into the 21st century. We are going to talk about the aughts, the early 2000s. And we have a long list here. It's still 10, but we snuck in some other ones of the best players from the aughts. Scott, this is a decade for me that I think of as the decade of dynasties. That in Canada, certainly, and when you look around the world, there were dynastic teams for a lot of countries. There wasn't that much variability when you looked at world championship fields because the same teams kept winning national championships over and over again.
Yeah. It's rare for us here in Canada to have that, right? Where the same teams keep winning. But it was definitely the case for us. On the women's side, it was even the same last name. So I think every team that won the Scotties is on this list in some point. So there wasn't that many of them.
No, 3 teams won the Scotties, and not just 3 skips, which when we get to the 2010s next week, you start to see skips repeat with different teams. These teams didn't change in the midst of the runs, which is kind of remarkable and shows how the sport has changed in terms of team construction, even in the last 10 years. So this is a fun list for me. This is where maybe my fandom was really born out. First time I ever went to live curling was during the aughts. It was the 2009, I think, Scotties in Regina. No, 2008 Scotties in Regina. And it was a really fun event put on expertly by the folks there in Regina. The Heartstop Lounge was attached to the arena, which I think is key, especially in a place like Regina. Just a lot of fun. But this is a decade that for me that I really became a fan, I think, of curling.
Yeah, and for me it was spending time in my university residence, taking my pillow to the couch in the lounge to hunker down for 3-hour curling matches at whatever time it was.
Yeah.
Everybody is like, who's this weird guy that's always in the lounge watching curling? What a weirdo.
Yeah.
But like you say, this sort of cemented my love of the game this decade here.
Yes. So there are some really good players, really good teams who did not crack the top 10. So just a couple quick honorable mentions. Bingyu Wang, one of the best. She was a world champion, first woman from the Pacific Asian region to win. I believe actually the first team from the Pacific Asia region to win a world championship in 2009. Very exciting moment, talking about growing the game into a part of the world that hadn't had success on the international stage to really any great extent. She lost the 2008 World Championship final to Jennifer Jones. So really a phenomenal run there around that 2010 Olympics, won a bronze medal in 2011 as well. Couldn't quite get her on this list because the field is so strong, but we just wanted to acknowledge Bingyu Wang and her incredible contributions to the sport and growing the sport in China. We also have on here Miriam Ott. She is, for me, as we talked about this before we started to record, kind of a shoulder player, if that makes sense, where she has a lot of success late in the aughts, early in the 2010s. But if you take the decades on their own, doesn't quite stand out. But if you had a player if we were ranking from 2005 to 2015, she's definitely on the list.
Couple silver medals for her, 7 Euro medals in the decade. So very solid.
Yeah.
Just a real shame at the 2010 Olympics. I guess it's not a shame if you're Canadian and you were cheering for Cheryl Bernard, but she just sort of lost it.
Yeah.
Lost her draw weight in the semis and the bronze medal game.
Yeah.
But great career.
Absolutely. And then the final honorable mention, the great Rona Martin, who we love listening to her on the call whenever there is a World Curling event that they produce themselves. She is often on the call. 2002 Olympic gold medalist. And that's pretty much all she did on the international stage. Went to the World Championship in 2000, finished 4th place there. But it's that gold medal that stands out. Almost Mike Harris-esque, if Mike Harris had won the gold medal, where internationally the success comes at one Olympic Games, and then the person becomes well-known, arguably maybe more well-known for the broadcast ability and being entertaining on TV. I think Rona Martin kind of falls into that category a little bit.
Yeah, that's an interesting comparison. I kind of agree with that. That's something that we'll have to watch. Who's going to be the next, really great for a short amount of time and then onto the TV.
Onto TV, yeah. Who will it be? I don't know. I think Chelsea Carey's been great for longer than a short amount of time, but Chelsea Carey on TV is going to be amazing if she chooses she wants to do that.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. So, Scott, let's get into this list. Again, the criteria that we used, pretty much relying on World Championships, Brier, Scotties. The Olympics play an outsized role, at least for me, in trying to come up with the rankings. Because if we are going to accept that the Olympics is the pinnacle of the sport and the players themselves seem to treat it like that, they set their schedules around the Olympics. Teams are made for quadrennials at this point. That's how we're going to focus on this and say that the Olympics have a bit of an outweighed importance in coming up with these rankings. So that being said, let's get right into it, Scott. Who do we have in the 10 spot?
Well, Sean, you talked about the Olympics being very important. Let's go with the first Olympic gold medalist of the decade out of Norway, Pal Trulsen. So, like I say, 2002 Olympic gold medalist. He represented Norway at 7 straight world championships from 1999 to 2005. Had a silver medal in 2002, a bronze in 2001 and 2003, and then that gold from the Olympics right in the middle there. He was sort of the Thomas Ulsrud before Thomas Ulsrud was the rep out of Norway. He was sort of, I don't know about the ladies listening, they might say different, but he was sort of the stalwart for Norway and then transitioned into coaching the Norwegian program, and we saw him quite a bit at the Continental Cup when that was coming into prominence late in the decade.
Yeah, he looks like a guy who wouldn't be a lot of fun. Just
he looks stern.
He looks like he would be scary, but he seems to have a lot of fun at those events and enjoys the atmosphere, enjoys being around the other players, really wants to make it a fun environment, which, again, if you were just to see a photo of him, that's not necessarily what you would expect if you were purely stereotyping based on appearance. His personality doesn't seem to match it because he seems like a really fun guy.
When I think of a Norwegian, I think of Pal Trulsen.
Okay.
When I'm like, what would a Norwegian look like? I feel like, yeah. Maybe that's because of him.
Yeah.
That I think that.
Yeah. Maybe Scott, he should, if he needs a new gig, he should go and be the Norwegian person at Epcot in the World Showcase.
Yes,
He
I
could
was
just
thinking
stand
that.
there as the honorary representative Norwegian.
That would
Just
be
wave
great.
at everybody.
That would be great.
Yeah.
All right. Who we got next, Sean?
All right, next up is the great Kelly Scott, one of the 3 Scotties champion skips during the decade. Back-to-back wins in 2006 and 2007. Came off of a bronze medal at the Scotties in 2005. Didn't have the greatest level of success at the World Championships, but she won one of the 2 she played in, winning in 2007. Lost in a semifinal there lost the semifinal in 2006. That's still when it was the Page playoff system, no bronze medal game. She did lose as well the 2005 Olympic trial final to Shannon Kleibrink and her team, who did not make this list. And this is one of those things, Scott, that 3-4 year run of this Kelly Scott team was so much fun to me to watch. I know she was a somewhat polarizing figure, that after every shot she would give the times, and for whatever reason people did not always enjoy her. I never understood it. I thought she was a lot of fun. Gina Schrader was so good in this run, the best third in the world at the time. Sasha Carter and Renee Simons on the front end, very strong players, but I think the key to this team was Gina Schrader and how good she was in those 2 Scotties, particularly in the playoffs. In those 2 Scotties, she would rip your heart out if you gave her the chance to, and oftentimes other teams did give her that chance, and she just took care of those opportunities. As I said, I was there at that 2008 Scotties in Regina, and I was there the night that they were eliminated from the playoffs, and it was great that it was Regina, really knowledgeable fans. It had been a somewhat emotional week that week because Michelle Engelot's father had died right before the event, and she was there as Team Saskatchewan. She was emotional all week, and as a result, the crowd was very emotional for her. And the night that Kelly Scott was eliminated, she had not been getting a lot of love from the Regina crowd over the course of the week. But when she was eliminated and she went down, got her broom, and was coming down the ice, the place just erupted in this appreciative cheer for what that team had accomplished over the previous 3 years. And it was a beautiful moment to see of this crowd that wasn't on her side at all, giving her the respect that I think she was due at that point, or certainly she had earned. Just wonderful to be in the building in that moment. And this is a team that I'm higher on than I think most people. I really liked watching them. As I said, not necessarily the case for others. She did crack an 8-ender too in an early Grand Slam, for what that's worth. But a team that I very much enjoyed. Now, Scott, you were in BC for a lot of this stretch where they were at the top of their game. So maybe you have a different perception, as they were the hometown team.
Yeah, I think they were very, very good, very, very strong. What you say, like 10.5, is like etched in my mind every time I hear it. But she was, I think, a breath of fresh air from the Colleen Jones days. Just like, oh, somebody new to come in and again dominate. But I like this team. I think you're right about Gina Schrader being the key. Although Kelly Scott could be deadly with her draw weight, if she's on it, like, good luck beating her. But I'm not as far in your camp as really loving them, but I'm also not in the hating them camp of being annoyed by the times.
Yeah, which a lot of people were.
Yeah. But I think great player. Definitely deserving of a spot on this list.
Absolutely. So let's move up to the number 8 spot, Scott. Who we got there?
So, Sean, this is another example of the Olympic gold probably being a little more valuable in this decade in our minds. And we're going to put Brad Gushue on this list. Olympic gold 2006, sort of out of nowhere, right? They bring Russ Howard onto their team to participate in the trials. End up shocking everybody and winning, going to the Olympics, winning that gold medal. That's the real highlight of the decade for Brad Gushue, but also he was the Brier rep out of Newfoundland every year starting in 2003, and I think has been every year since, except for when he's representing Canada.
Yeah.
So pretty incredible streak. I know Newfoundland is not the most difficult province to get out of, but you still have to beat some good teams. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't think I could do it. So Briar rep every year. He did make to the gold medal match in 07. Was that against
That was he lost that one to Howard.
to Glenn Howard?
Yeah.
Yeah. So a silver medal there. But just sort of the beginnings of Brad Gushue that we know now, and we might talk about him again next week on our next list. So what do you think of that, Sean?
Yeah, I think it's fair to put him in this spot. As I said at the top, the Olympic gold medals, they mean something. And again, if we're going to acknowledge or accept that is the pinnacle of the sport, then that matters. And yeah, it came out of nowhere. Yes, they brought in Russ Howard to do it. And yes, the wink in the gun got a little old by the end of the week, but he won it and he did it.
Yeah.
And he was the one who was making those shots at the end. He wasn't calling the game, no, but he was making the shots at the end. And him with Korab and Nichols, just a remarkable team, and went on a great run to win. I remember I happened to be in Barbados studying abroad during the 2006 Olympics, but we got the CBC on a satellite dish in the residence. And I was able to watch the gold medal game while all of my Caribbean friends were making great fun of what I was watching and me for wanting to watch it. But they allowed me to do it. They were nice enough to allow me to do it.
Well, that's nice anyway.
Yeah. Well, all that was really on, it was during the day, it was a weekday. The only thing that was really on, because they just wanted to watch soccer all the time, but there was no soccer going on. So they were okay. All right. At least it was sports that I wanted to watch. And none of the countries from which where they were from were represented in this particular Olympic Games. So I could watch the CBC coverage of the game. But I do remember that I think he had a draw for 7, an open draw for 7 in that gold medal game in the 6th or 7th end, and he put it through.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, oh, come on, Brad.
Come on.
And he was interviewed after, and he said, yeah, I would have liked to make it, but it didn't matter. The game was over. We scored 6. Who cares? I thought, okay, I can appreciate that mindset. But yeah, just again, an out of nowhere thing. He doesn't go on to win the Briar until 2017. So it takes him a long time. It takes him a lot of teammates to figure out the right formula to break through at the Briar. And when he does, it's a magical moment. But he won it. Can't take it away from him. And really a high point, certainly, of his career and worthy of a spot on this list.
Yeah, absolutely. So next up,
who
do we got?
We're going across the pond to Scotland for the great David Murdoch, coming in at number 7. He medaled in 4 out of 5 world championships between 2005 and 2009, winning the gold in 2006 and having the gold handed to him in 2009. He won a silver medal in 2005 and 2008. He also won the European Championships in 2003, 7, and 8. Got a silver there in 2006, a bronze in 2005. Did participate in the Olympic Games during this decade. Didn't quite have the success they would have wanted. Didn't earn a medal, but did make those appearances as Team Great Britain there at the Olympic Games. So two-time world champion during the decade. Again, we are kind of prioritizing Olympics a little bit here, but certainly a solid run for David Murdoch and a team that could beat you anytime they step on the ice.
Yeah, I really pushed for this one on the list because that run of 5 years, they were, I would say, maybe the second best team in the world. Maybe the 2 top teams in the world were in Canada, but
I think so.
Outside of Canada, I think it was them.
Yeah.
And not particularly close.
Right.
With any of the others. Just so consistent and strong. And like you say, that maybe that 09 gold medal, little asterisk beside that, which we'll talk about later, I think. And just very solid. And then I'll always remember him sort of stealing Tom Brewster's team in 2012, I think, or 2013. They made that decision to try to get ready for the Olympics in 2014. And he's still a big time coach in the Scottish curling, maybe the face of it outside of the players.
Yeah,
So
I would think so.
It's still a big presence, very, very strong player.
Yeah, no question about it. And go listen to the Rocks Across the Pond episode where they talk about the 2009 World Final, and not just about the game itself, but also what it meant, and that having that victory for David Murdoch gave him the agency within Scottish curling to make that move later on. And he had enough power within the organization, credibility from that victory to do that. So just a fascinating tale of the career of David Murdoch.
Yeah, so going into the 2010 Olympics too, I it's probably easy to forget that Team Martin was probably the favorite, but not runaway favorite. The way that it happened, right?
Yeah,
David Murdoch being there, they were, maybe just slightly lower odds to win the gold. They ended up not getting a medal, losing in the semifinal, but still one of the best teams, especially at that time.
Yeah, absolutely. No question about it. So Scott, let's move on then to number 6. You mentioned some of the best teams in the world. Maybe 2 of them were in Canada. I think this is one you were alluding to.
I think so, Sean. So this is Glenn Howard and his team there that's really came into the forefront like 05, 06. Really, they were there, but where the team that we know came in. So they won the Brier in 07, were silver medalists in 06, 08, and 10, and a silver medalist at the 09 trials. So they're only losing to Kevin Martin. They're so great. So many great games between those teams. And Sean, he murdered Joel Jordison on national TV and got away with it. And that's that amazing shot.
Yeah.
The run back, cross house double, where he sticks the shooter. Like
it's impossible to describe. If you've never seen this shot, I think it is legitimately impossible to describe how amazing it was. And there was seemingly no shot there. He's going up the ice and he says, in turn, out turn. That doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
And he just whips it and he somehow makes this shot. There's a great clip of the Team USA. I can't remember who it was, leading into the Olympics in 2010. Colbert, when he was doing the old show, had them on to talk about it. And they tried to explain to him what this shot was. And Colbert in this character was just like, oh yeah, that's the good stuff. Like it was just because it's just so hard to explain it. And yeah, he murdered Joel Jordison in that moment. Joel Jordison was going to win that game as Team Saskatchewan. Maybe that propels him into the playoffs, but that was it for Joel Jordison in that event. Hasn't been back to a Brier since. And I feel kind of bad for Joel Jordison, but Joel Jordison also had the best seat in the house for what I would argue is the greatest shot of all time. Not the most important shot of all the time, not the most substantive shot, not the most meaningful shot, but the greatest shot that I've ever seen made in a curling game.
Yeah, it's just incredible.
Yeah.
And, like I say, if it's not for Team Kevin Martin, we might be talking about 4-time Brier champs during this time. They were those two teams like just traded blows.
Yeah.
And Glenn would win some games, but in the big games, it seemed like Kevin Martin always had the answer.
Yeah, no question. I think in the later part of the aughts, when those two teams were at their best, leading into the 2010 Olympics, certainly in Canada, and I think probably in the world, everyone else was playing for third place. That those were the two best teams. And it was kind of like what I would kind of like to see with women's hockey at the Olympics, where unless a world championship, a team other than Canada or the United States makes the gold medal game, that at the Olympics, just give us the best out of 7 Americans against the Canadians. That's what everybody wants to see. And then everybody else can play for third place because they're basically playing for third place anyway. That's what it was like in the late part of the aughts, that those two teams were there. They were going to be in the final. They were going to have a game later in the week, because that's when Curling Canada would schedule those games
Mm-hmm.
for first place, and then they'd be in the 1-2 game, and then we'd see them again in the final, and it was amazing.
Yeah. I remember watching or going down to the Briar in 2011 in London, and I decided I'm going to go on the day when Alberta and Ontario play each other. Like,
Yeah.
why would I go any other game?
Yeah.
That's when I need to go.
Yep.
Ironically, neither of them won. It was Stoughton, but yeah, the two best teams there, no doubt about it. So Sean, next up, number 5.
Next up, number 5, the great Jennifer Jones. She won 4 Scotties championships during the decade, if we count 2010 as part of this decade, because I'm going to, because why not? So 2005, 2008, 2009, 2010, 2005, of course, was the great shot that she makes the in-off to win the Scotties against Jen Hanna and Team Ontario. A shot that, in retrospect, they did not sweep properly, but I guess it's a good thing because the shot was made. She didn't have the success at the World Championships that you might have expected from her. She only wins 1 in those 4 trips, the 2008 World Championship. She goes 4th place in 2005, 2009, and bronze in 2010. So for a long time, Jennifer Jones, and maybe she still has this rep of not being successful at the World Championship, because she's only won, I believe, 2 World Championships, which is weird to say only. But when you win as many Scotties as she does, I guess only fits as a way to describe it. But she has for a time had this reputation as not being able to get it done at a World Championship. But she wins that one in 2008. She struggles at the 2009 trials, which I think hurts her in this ranking a little bit. She only went 2 and 5 there. Pretty shocking that I had to be the pressure got to her.
And they were easily the favorites.
Oh, no question. Yeah, by far the favorites. And it had to have been just the pressure of an event at home in Vancouver. I believe those trials, were they not in Winnipeg too, or was that 2013?
Good question. I'll look it up.
Yeah, you can correct me on that. But just, it seemed like in that moment, everything came together and they couldn't sustain for that week, which is too bad because they were so good, best in the world at that point, I would think, or I would argue. And just an amazing run. And she's still going. We might see her again. Who knows? But this is where it all starts for Jennifer Jones, winning those 4 championships and 3 in a row to wrap up the decade.
That's right, Sean. What a great team. Those trials were in Edmonton. And yeah, I think that's just it. You get off to a bad start and you're trying to play come from behind. You're pressing a bit. Wasn't in the cards for them that week, which is too bad. But this team is sort of, I talked about Glenn Howard, like, oh, if Martin wasn't there, they could have won, 4 championships. Like, Jennifer Jones did it.
Yeah.
That's why they're there. I think that was a big knock on her early in her career, that she didn't seem to perform at the world stage. I think when Chelsea Carey had trouble at the Worlds, that sort of reminded me of early Jennifer Jones. Obviously, Jennifer was able to shake that. We'll see in the future if Chelsea Carey is, but maybe you could argue, Jennifer Jones is one of these shoulder people, right? Like, she was great the last 5 years of the decade, but the level of greatness was just so high. Yeah, she's got to be on this list.
Absolutely. No question about it. So, Scott, we got 4 left. So who is in that number 4 spot?
So, Sean, number 4, we talked at the beginning about the dynasties that make the decade. So here we've got a split between David Nedohin and Randy Ferbey, mostly because I don't want Randy Ferbey to get mad at our rankings for excluding him. We have only been talking about skips, mostly because they're the ones that make the last shots, but team is important. So we'll put Nedohin and Ferbey together. 4-time Brier winners, 01, 02, 03, 05, the silver in 04, of course, the meltdown and loss to Mark Dacey. They also won the Worlds in 02, 03, and 05. This was the team of the decade up till 2005.
Yeah.
And unbeatable. Some might say, oh, well, Scott, not everybody was playing in the Briars at that time? Well, you play the schedule that's in front of you,
Mhm.
and they were the only ones that won all of those. So
Yeah. Well, I think the case for that people make in part for the fact that, well, other people weren't there and therefore it's not as great is that they didn't represent Canada at the 2002 Olympics or the 2006 Olympics. They did not win those trials, and those were
Yes.
full field events. Everyone who could go went. So there was no
Yeah.
boycott of the trials in those years. And I think that's part of it, that they did not get it done at those two events. That being said, those runs at the Briar were remarkable and they just overpowered everybody. And yeah, the players we have listed, I would put Nedwin as being the more important individual in terms of shot making. He was just lights out and just phenomenal touch when he would go through, especially on his draw game. But what Rock and Pfeiffer could do, that was transformative. They were Kennedy and Hebert before Kennedy and Hebert. They were the first ones to put a lot of effort into the gym, put fitness as a priority, recognizing that sweeping can be the difference between winning and losing games at this level. And they did that more than anybody else. So this team in its totality, the four of them all together, really are remarkable in how we think of the game. They set the stage for what comes next. That Howard Martin rivalry is built in part, I would argue, on the back of the Furby Four.
Yeah, I agree. And I think for that reason, Sean, we're just going to call this the Furby Four.
Okay.
We're going to call position number 4 on our list.
Yeah.
The Furby Four.
The Furby Four. Yeah. And as an added bonus, this didn't happen in the decade, I don't think. One of the best cameos on Corner Gas that we've ever seen.
That was during the decade.
Okay, great. So that's an added point.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Scott, let's move up. Number 3, the bronze medal position for the decade goes to the one and only Colleen Jones, greatest East Coast curler of all time, winning the Scotties in 2001, 2002, 2003, 2004. Also, they had won in 1999. They got a bronze medal in the 2006 and bronze medal of the 2006 Scotties, won the world championship in 2001, 2004, a world silver in 2003, and was the bronze medal recipient at the 2001 Olympic trials. Another team that, unfortunately, I think this is sad, legitimately sad, that Colleen Jones never got the chance to play in Olympic Games. They were so dominant, this team. Now, we said this last week or 2 weeks ago when we talked about the 1990s, the tragedy of Sandra Schmirler. If obviously the human tragedy of it, the curling tragedy of it is, for as much fun as we had watching Howard Martin, watching Schmirler Jones in the early aughts would have been amazing.
Yeah, and a lot more fun, I think, than just watching Colleen Jones run down the competition. Talked about Kelly Scott, maybe some people not enjoying watching her on TV. I think Colleen had a little bit of that.
She was much less popular, I think, than Kelly Scott.
Yeah.
She was very polarizing, Colleen Jones, and still is, I think.
Well, part of it, Sean, I think, was the style of play.
Yes.
They were very defensive.
Yes.
Super boring at times.
Yeah.
But it was effective, and they were good at it.
Yeah.
Sort of before hitting in the ladies' game was as prominent as we see today. Like, I don't think the hitting was as good.
No.
Right? I think Jennifer Jones is the one that takes that step.
Yes.
Being able to throw the high, hard one.
Yeah. With Jill Officer, like being able to, right? That lineup of Jones, being able, and Kathy O could throw the hard one too, but really having Jill Officer as that weapon made it for Jennifer Jones. And you see it with Colleen Jones too. They can't throw it as hard. All of them, Marianne Arsenault, Marianne Way at the time, she didn't have the same power as what we see later on, but very accurate with the upweight when she needed to throw it.
Yeah, and that's the difference between them and other teams.
Yeah,
was they were able to make the shots they were calling. Mm-hmm. So ran that to I mean, 4 straight Scotties. That's something you can't argue with. No
No.
boycott in women's curling.
Nope, everyone was there. And just as an added bonus, Colleen Jones owns one of my favorite quotes of all time when they talked about splitting the world championships into a men's event and a women's event and not having them together. She talked about how the women would have to play in bikinis in order to get any attention.
Well, obviously not true.
Yeah, she was off on that one. She missed that
Yeah.
prediction. It was a great quote. It was a great quote.
Did I ever tell you, Sean? I worked at CBC for a while, and Colleen Jones called. And
yeah.
I was in the weather office there, and nobody else was around. So I picked up the phone, and she's like, "Hey, it's Colleen. I need to know some weather info for Halifax." I was like, "Okay." A little starstruck, you know. I
Yeah.
wasn't expecting Colleen Jones to be just calling me on the phone,
Right.
asking some info. But yeah,
Well, she needed
Pretty-
the info. She's got to give the weather to the wonderful people of Halifax.
exactly. So that's my brush with Colleen Jones.
All right, Scott, we got 2 spots left. I think one of those spots is not going to surprise anybody. Maybe this other one will. So who is it?
So we talked about the dynasties within Canada.
Yeah.
One of the biggest dynasties that we see outside of Canada is the new face of Swedish curling. Last week we talked about Elizabeth Gustafsson, and this time it's Annette Norberg.
Yeah.
Euro champ in 01, 02, 03, 04, 05, and 07. Sorry, 2006. Silver in 2008, 2-time world champ in 05 and 06, a silver medal at the Worlds in 2001 and 2009. Also at the Olympics, won gold in 2006 and 2010. How's that for a decade?
That's not too bad. Ain't nothing wrong with that.
How's she only number 2?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
after reading all that.
Yeah.
So like Swedish curling, like we talked about, is sort of
Unfairly good.
and then you have the Norberg years, and now we're experiencing the Hasselberg years. Just amazing team and amazing player to be that good for that long.
Yeah.
On the world stage.
Yeah, no question. Just a dominant run for Annette Nordberg.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's incredible to think about how good she is. And she won another world championship in 2011, just continuing that run that just dominant, just an absolute dominant run for Annette Norberg. And that's the only word that I can really think of to describe her.
Yeah. I just show up to world championships and win.
Yeah. So it's weird too. So she was inducted into the Swedish Curling Hall of Fame. Scott, when do you think she was inducted into the Swedish Curling Hall of Fame?
Well, I would guess maybe like mid-teens, but probably she was inducted before that.
She was inducted into the Swedish Curling Hall of Fame in 1989.
Wow.
After the silver medal at the Olympics in Calgary, that silver that she got when it was a demonstration sport.
Mm-hmm.
That's when she got into the Hall of Fame. She had represented Sweden at the World Championship in 88 and 89, then again in 91. Then she takes a break from the international level of curling. But so she's doing all this in the aughts, already in Sweden's Curling Hall of Fame, in for so long that her photo is probably pretty dusty. And then she's going on this run. She did get inducted this year, her and her teammates from the Olympics, into the World Curling Federation Hall of Fame. Probably a little late on that one, WCF.
Maybe a bit. Yeah.
So, Scott, that's the run that comes in second place, which means that the run that comes in first place has to be incredibly impressive. And it is. It's the team that I think you would argue, I think I could be convinced on any given day, was the best of all time. That is the Team Martin from the latter part of the aughts. Kevin Martin, John Morris, Mark Kennedy, and Ben Hebert, Brier champions in 2008 and 2009. They win the Olympic gold medal in dominant fashion at the 2010 Olympics in Vancouver. World champions in 2008. The 2009 game we've made reference to as to whether or not they could have won that and what happened there. I would say that the 2009 silver medal is more memorable than the 2008 gold medal. for probably all the wrong reasons. And then if you take the team in their totality, Kevin Martin also won the silver medal at the 2002 Olympic Games. And John Morris skipped his Ontario rink, which included Saville and Lang, to the 2002 Brier final, losing that game to the Furby 4. So all in all, an incredible team, an incredible run, not as long as some of the other runs that we might have seen, but a team that at their best, there's nothing you could do to beat them. They had to miss for you to have a chance. And it was leading like the 2010 Olympics in retrospect. And you were there, you were in the building. I don't know if it felt like this in the building, and certainly you can tell me, certainly because it felt like this on TV sometimes, that the teams, as they were coming out and they would show them on the screens, they just had a look in their eye of we can't beat these guys.
Yeah.
And you're right. They couldn't.
They couldn't. Yeah, I think like we mentioned, maybe David Murdoch's team was the only one that like really thought they could do it. That's the year that we see Thomas Ulsrud's team debut. No, not debut, but we see them debut at the Olympics, I guess. And they're sort of bringing the fun to it. So maybe their freewheeling attitude, they thought they could. But I mean, come on. Kevin Martin, we talked about him last week or last time too, right?
Yep.
Number 6 in the 90s decade. Then he sort of betters what he did in the 90s in the aughts. And when we say the whole team, right? Because you think of John Morris being a really strong player through the whole decade until he hooks up with Team Martin. I believe Kennedy was in juniors in the early part of the decade, but I might be wrong. So maybe the 90s, but just like such a great team. And their peak is the highest peak, I would say, of any other team. They're the best team I've ever seen play. The runner-up that I have in mind is that Russ Howard team in 92, 93 with Glenn Howard, Wayne Madaw, and Peter Corner. But of the teams I've seen play live, this is the best. And with the, like due respect to Kevin Cooey or Brad Gushue, like it's not really close.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think in an alternate world where we could fantasy book a Brier, which we have done before, we would have that Russ Howard team from the 80s, early 90s play against this team and see what happens, because we would love to see that. So yeah, it just a remarkable run that they went on. So to just put a point on Kennedy, he did play in junior events early in the 2000s, won a gold medal representing Canada at the Universiade in 2003. He won gold medal at the Canada Winter Games in 1999 when he would have been, I think, 17 years old at that point. So still in the junior ranks early in the decade before hooking up with Kevin Martin. But just
we're the same age, Mark Kennedy and I. So.
Yeah, how does that make you feel, Scott?
It's good. That's good. I feel like, okay, he seems older than me. I don't know why, but
well, I mean, look at this. So marketing degree from Alberta, University of Alberta, owned an M&M meat shop franchise, sold it in 2012. Now he's a real estate agent. He won the Heck Jervis Scholarship. This is impressive.
Yeah, he's an impressive guy, impressive career.
Yeah.
But so like all we're saying is all of Team Martin, great players, great careers.
Yeah, no question about it. No question. So Here we go. Scott, the list again from 10 to 1. Pal Trulson, Kelly Scott, Brad Gushue, David Murdoch, Glenn Howard, Jennifer Jones, the Furby 4, Colleen Jones, Annette Nordberg, and then Team Martin at the top of the table for the odds. Scott, anything that you vehemently disagree with on this list?
Nothing that I vehemently disagree with. I was thinking though, as we were talking, Sean, what about Jeff Stoughton? And when I think about Jeff Stoughton, he's like wins in 96 and 99. Then like in 2007, then 11. Like it's not clustered together like the sort of things that we talked about here. It's more of like very consistently good for a long time.
Yeah.
So if somebody wants to quibble and put Stoughton on one of our lists, I get it, but it's not that peak that we're looking for.
No, he was just really good for a really long time. He kind of is like a Gushu type before Gushu turned into this version of Gushu that we see today, where they're a lot competitive, make it to a finals. Yeah, maybe we'll win every so often, but just didn't quite have that same level as other teams. And part of that was the rotation of players that Jeff Stoughton had to go through. It was Steve Gould and then whoever else he could get, because people wanted to skip their own teams in Manitoba. People were moving around and about. I think probably his best team was when he had Nichols, because Nichols is really good. Now, I mean, John Meade, you take that too. Gets there. Reed Carruthers was on the team for a while. I'm not sure how well the dynamic was. I think they hopefully liked each other, but just the on ice dynamic, it always seemed strange there. But he did run through some players, and I think that probably hurt because these other teams in this era of dynasties stayed together.
That's right.
And I think that gave them an advantage.
Yeah. So anyway, that's the only thing that came to mind. But overall, I like this list. I want to hear what everybody else has to say. What do you think out there?
Yeah. Do you agree with this list? Let us know who we let off, where you would rank the teams from the Yachts, and certainly feel free to reach out. Let us know. You can find us on social media at Game of Stones Pod on Twitter and Instagram, or via email, gameofstonespodcast@gmail.com. So that'll do it for this week. Thank you, everybody, for listening. If you have not yet, please do subscribe to the show, share it around, do the likes, ratings, comments, all that good stuff. Helps other people find the show, beats those algorithms. And do head on over gameofstonespod.com. Click on the merch tab, where we have some t-shirts and hoodies and toques for sale, with all the proceeds going to the Sandra Schmirler Foundation and Food Banks Canada. We are matching all of the proceeds as we continue to run the merch. And as we start to approach September, we will look at the totals and make the donation. We tend to look at them monthly and make those donations. So if you're looking for something, weather will turn eventually, even though it doesn't feel like it here in the nation's capital. And some of those colder weather items might be of value before you know it. So do feel free to check that out. So Scott, that'll do it for the Aughts.
Very good.
We're going to turn the page next week to the 2010s. Are you excited?
I'm very excited.
All right.
Because there's lots of curlers.
Yes. The 2010s is stacked.
Yeah. It'll be about, trying to let the cream rise to the top, trying to sort through all the excellent players.
Yeah. It'll be a lot of fun. We're looking forward to it. Hopefully you are as well. So we'll talk to you then. But until then, keep those brooms on the ice and don't dump that intern.
Make the final.